Very nice work, and a great presentation as well. Thank you. Does Hudson have, or any plans to have, graphical displays, red-green displays of the output of certain kinds of tests?
I think there are several plugins that sort of, let's see. There's the one that sort of gives you like a great full screen view. So it has a much more prominent status for the build that you chose. And then so people often put up a nice display in the common break area where they show the build status. So if that's the kind of thing you want to do, you can do so. Some other people developed actual physical devices. Like I actually wrote one that's it's like a real world manifest orb. I put some LEDs in it, and those are controlled by the USB devices. And that was put in the coffee table, and so the people could actually see what's going on. Other people took this. There's like an Ethernet controllable power switch that you can buy for pretty cheap. And so there's a plugin that exists that controls those, and some people connect that with the lava lamp. So if the build fails, so the red lava lamp starts to flow, and then the manager gets noticed what's going on. If you're not assembling those lower level pieces, you can buy some. I think there's a company that sells a pretty cute rabbit. And then they come with like a wireless support of some sort, so that you could talk to their web services to make rabbits speak, or do some cute things, or they speak. And so again, there's a plugin for that, and so you can use those things. And a lot of people like that. What I discovered is that the downside of making these results visible is that your manager had normally no idea that the build is breaking all that often. So when I started putting this the build status in the coffee area, they really got scared because they see this failure all the time. Right? So if you're thinking about doing that, just be careful about what your manager might find out.
You spoke about sort of connecting and managing Linux slaves and Windows slaves. Does Hudson have the same capability for Mac slaves?
Yeah, so the Macs, I think you can very easily have SSH daemon running. I don't know if it's on by default, but you could certainly, the binary comes in the default distribution. So most of the Hudson users on the Mac could just run it through SSH.
Okay.
So
then I guess when you're using sauce on demand, how do you disseminate the headless process fix? Where you have to set up certain things for the Windows machines, or on the Windows machines, in order to get them to allow people to use the.
One of the beauty of source on demand is that you're no longer running browsers in your build cluster. So those slaves could be totally headless. You don't have to configure anything specific. And then those machines that are running in the cloud are pre-configured properly to run those environments. So you don't have to do anything, really. Yeah.
So I'm wondering, can you take a part of the build process, let's say like generating coverage report, or detecting some problems with the code, let's say some company level, standards of coding or whatever, and spread that over the entire distributed build, and have parts of it taken care of?
So one of the challenges, or one of the reality here, is that for most of the actual hard work of, let's say, the static code analysis, isn't in Hudson. Those are implemented in their respective tools. So let's say if you're doing Java, you might use Findbugs or PMD or some sort of things like that. And then unless those tools are written to take advantage of the distributed environment, and they are not written that way today, then you can't run the analysis of the single project on multiple nodes. What you can do is, you have lots of smaller components, and normally a big team is organized like that. The bigger project is sort of split into smaller chunks, and they each have smaller subteams and so on. So they could each run their stuff on different parts of the node. So as a whole, you are taking advantage of the whole cluster. But if the single, say, Findbugs execution is still running on a single node, so you don't really get that kind of benefit. But I think just because the underlying, again, the utilizing lots of machines is becoming more and more common. So I think it's just a matter of time that people start writing tools that's really capable of taking multiple computing nodes. But that needs to come from, say, Findbug high. So.
Is there a Hudson plugin that facilitates dynamic slaves like in Amazon's cloud?
There is. In fact, there is a slide for that. So one of the obvious ideas is that, well, because it's kind of easy to start the new slaves from Hudson's perspective, right? The only hard part is about noticing, well, actually provisioning the machine that runs the build. And then that got a lot easier nowadays with the cloud. So we now have this, let's say, this Amazon EC2 plugin. So Hudson could actually keep track of the load that it's running today. So this is one of the load statistics chart that the blue line on the top is showing the current capacity. So this is taken from the Hudson cluster where it has 4 concurrent execution capability. The red line is the actual load. So this one is like almost fully utilized. You can see that it's like up. The red line is almost always on the top. And then there's a gray line down there which is showing the current number of jobs in the queue. So if you have the Amazon EC2 plugin installed, Hudson would notice that, let's say, there's a huge spike in the number of things in the queue. So that's when it decides that, oh, now I need to provision additional capacity from the cluster. So it will speak the EC2 protocol, allocate the new machine on the cloud, and then wait for that to show up, and then it copies the files, and then starts the build there. And then once the build kind of quiets down, and let's say if those additional capacity on the cloud is no longer necessary, then it will shut down the machine. So it does exist and it works today. The only downside that I discovered is that your source code is normally within your firewall. And so when you're doing build, you have to bring your entire source code over to the cloud. And then once the build is over, you now have to bring back all the test reports and so on. So this is pretty network intensive. So you may or may not like that arrangement. Also, I guess some companies have policies about having source code, not outside your firewall kind of thing. So they might raise their eyebrows if you're telling them that I'm now sending source code over to Amazon. So that's the kind of the non-technical things that you have to think about. But the capability-wise, yeah, you can do builds on EC2.